Well, it's only the first preseason game. Can't get worse than that, right? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Full Command Show for the official game reaction, the first of the 2025 NFL preseason. New England Patriots 48, Washington Commanders 18. We are going to jump into all of the big storylines from this game, the players that stuck out, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we're going to wrap it up by talking about my 5 biggest takeaways, and we're about to get into all of that. But before we do, guys, make sure you do me the favor, hit that subscribe button if you want to join the fastest growing community in the Commanders realm. Hit the like button if you enjoy it, and go to the comment section, let me know what you think of my thoughts and my biggest takeaways from this game. So it was a nice night out there in New England. Tom Brady got his statue retired before the game. Deebo Samuel and Mike Sainristil went to go watch beforehand. Pretty cool. Also, Tom Brady going to be close to the Commanders, back again pretty soon. He will be on the call for the Week 1 game against the New York Giants. For him being the GOAT quarterback, he was far from the GOAT announcer last year, but hey, it's the offseason. You know, he was a rookie last year, going into his second year. Maybe he makes some improvements, and I hope so, because that Lions game that he commentated, one of the best moments of my lifetime as a Commanders fan, and that's despite his best efforts to ruin it in the booth. But shout out to Tom Brady, got his statue. Out on the field, which is, of course, what we are here to talk about, there's a lot of things to say about this game, and most of them are not good. So I'm going to start with my biggest takeaways. We'll get into a little more nuanced conversations. And then, like I said, we're going to talk about my 5 takeaways and my 5 players that stuck out, I should say. That's going to be a theme moving forward for all of my game reactions. I'm going to finish talking about 5 players that stuck out for good and for bad reasons. And if it's applicable, I'm going to give a game ball. I will tease this right now. There are no game balls being given out tonight, because in a 30-point loss, even if it's the preseason, nobody deserves a game ball. But let's talk about my overall takeaways. Now, it's hard to have a worse start to any game, much less an entire season, than what the Commanders had, because they gave up a 100-yard kick return touchdown to TreVeyon Henderson, who's awesome. I am a huge TreVeyon Henderson fan, and for the long term, is it better to have an elite lineman than an elite running back? Absolutely. But I did kind of want the Commanders to take TreVeyon. I'm not calling myself a genius, because this guy is on the radar. Like, I didn't discover him, but you saw what he could do. And you also saw that the Commanders special teams tonight just were not prepared. Matt Gay missed his first kick in the night. That was a disaster, because he didn't miss a kick inside 50 yards last year. Missed from 49 tonight. The Patriots, like I said, they returned the first kickoff of the game for a touchdown. TreVeyon was basically untouched. Antonio Gibson in the second quarter returned it to the Commanders' 30. Antonio Gibson's never been the fastest guy in the world, and for him to do that, it just showed that the Commanders' special teams are not in a good place right now. So that's definitely something that they need to work on. Also, I'm just going to say this right now. I will declare the Sam Hartman, Josh Johnson QB3 battle, it's over. For all the reports in training camp that he was looking better, the Cliff Kingsbury notes that he'd been up and down, which the optimists in all of us wanted to believe that meant more up, like he started down and was going up. But no, I think it was just very much a fluctuation, and tonight was just all down. He was so bad that it was tough to evaluate anything about the receivers, because more times than not, he wasn't even giving them a chance to make a play on the ball. And even his completions, he wasn't throwing them open. He wasn't throwing them into running lanes. It's like they catch the ball for a 4-yard gain on an out route, and they're going out of bounds. They catch it over the middle field for 6 yards, and they're getting tackled immediately. Just a very bad night for Sam Hartman. And as soon as Josh Johnson came in, the guy's 39 years old. He's been on 13 teams. It should be expected that he starts sharper, but Hartman never warmed up into any sort of rhythm, and it was obvious from Johnson's first downfield pass that he was just going to be the better quarterback. I will defend both of those guys and say the interceptions, both of them, I can't blame fully on them. Johnson's, I can't really blame on him at all. He hit the receiver right in the hands. It bounced off. It was very reminiscent of Kadarius Toney's bobble that led to a Brian Branch pick six in that opening game with Chiefs-Lions, where the Lions upset the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Hartman's interception, Michael Gallup fell down running a curl route, so he could have maybe gotten back to the ball in time, but Hartman also released the ball too late. He gave the defender time to break on it, and it ended up being an interception. The best play of the night came from Johnny Newton, and that was a very welcome sign because Johnny Newton was firmly one of those players that I want to see develop. I have my eyes on him going into this preseason game, and I have talked about his importance to the Commanders for the long term because as a second-round pick, you're expected to produce sooner than later, and you're expected to produce for a long time. Now, I was willing to cut him some slack last year because he entered his first season in the NFL with a foot injury, didn't practice in training camp, started the year late, and he was a little on the smaller side. Speed was his gift, but when he hasn't been training, he's got a foot injury, it was obvious he wasn't going to play at his best. So I wanted to see what he had to offer in this game and the rest of the preseason, and he didn't disappoint. He had a good stop on a run play, on a screen play where he got in front of TreVeyon Henderson, kind of boxed him in and used his speed to just close the gap. And then he had the best play of the night, like I said, which was, I don't want to call it a strip sack because he didn't strip Drake May, but there was a little stunt where he got to the outside, used his speed to bend the corner, got to Drake May's legs, was taking him to the ground. May was trying to throw it, and as he brought the ball back, he fumbled it. The Commanders ended up recovering. So I guess that's more of a sack fumble than a strip sack, but best play of the night by far, Johnny Newton. Another good player who, again, I'm going to get to my standout players, but I want to make sure I mention this guy, Jacory Croskey-Merritt. Not very productive, only averaged 3.4 yards per carry, but that doesn't tell the full story. The Commanders really got nothing going at the point of attack all night, so he was not having big holes to run through, but he still did a very good job of showing the traits. And that's something that I mentioned in my game preview, which is I wanted to see traits, not necessarily production. I wanted to see the one cut, I wanted to see the burst, I wanted to see the toughness, the competitiveness, and he showed me all of that. There were quick cuts, jump cuts, and tight alleys. Definitely looked significantly faster than Brian Robinson. This is not to take shots at him, but just highlighting some of the differences. He also looked very powerful, which is something that I hadn't really seen from him. When a defender latched onto him, he was still constantly keeping his legs churning. He was moving forward. It took multiple guys to get him down if they were meeting him head on. He has this sort of unorthodox style where it looks like his legs are flying in the air, almost like a cartoon character trying to serpentine, but he still manages to stay on balance. And because he does, it allows him to break some tackles in tight spaces that you wouldn't expect. He also had a very nice reception, extended his arms. It was a hands catch, not a body catch. Made a couple of guys miss in the open field. Didn't end up counting because there was a penalty. I think it might have been a holding on the offensive line, but still a very good play. He definitely showed what we had all hoped he would. Now, is that going to translate to production? That remains to be seen. And am I declaring him running back one? No, I'm not. But I'm declaring him of the same ilk as Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson. Like, this guy deserves to be on the field, whether it's just 15% of snaps, whether it's 60%. There is a role for him in this offense, and he proved that tonight. Now let's move on to a lot more of the ugly, because in a 30-point loss, it's tough to find a lot of silver linings. The Patriots were able to set the edge and also prevent the Commanders from penetrating through the middle. That was disappointing. Eddie Goldman, I don't think he's going to be a star on this team, but he did get some decent reps, and he was playing into the second half, and I expected to see him at least clog up double teams, stop the initial push, and he wasn't able to do that. Now, it's easy to look worse when you're also playing next to incompetent players, and I'm not throwing that term around to insult anybody or say that they're incompetent overall, but more times than not, the Patriots were just ahead of where the Commanders' players were. So maybe Eddie Goldman is a victim of his circumstance and his environment, but at the same time, he didn't make plays. Even Norrell Pollard, who I believe is a second-year player from Virginia Tech and was injured all of last year, even he had a nice stop on the goal line. I forget the running back's name for the Patriots, but it's their undrafted guy from UC San Irvine or San Diego, UC Irvine or UC San Diego. I don't know. California school. And Norrell Pollard just swallowed him up at the goal line and threw him back for a couple-yard loss. Didn't see any of that from Eddie Goldman. Didn't really see that from anybody on the defensive line. Again, there was no penetration off the edge aside from the Johnny Newton sack. They let Drake May get loose in man coverage. They didn't get to the quarterback in time. The guys in man had their backs turned. Drake May runs. Couple plays later, down by the goal line, similar situation. May escapes the pocket. Josh Dobbs also managed to escape and walk in for a touchdown. So there are definitely some concerns there. There is a major step up from the Commanders' backup defensive line to the starters. But at the same time, when it's that noticeable, it shows you there's not really much depth to this unit. You have Javon Kinlaw, who should be good. You have Daron Payne, who might not be worth the contract that he's playing at, but it is a contract year for him, and we saw what happened last time he had one of those. He had 11 sacks and was a Pro Bowler, but he's also a good starter. If nothing else, he is a good starter. And Johnny Newton is going to be your top backup. He'll rotate in pretty frequently. He had the best play tonight, so you're feeling good about those three. Goldman was supposed to be the fourth guy. Didn't see enough from him tonight. Sheldon Day would have been that fourth guy if Goldman wasn't on the roster. Certainly he was worthy of that fourth spot based on his performances last year for what was on the roster, but he's undersized. And we saw the problems that created when you went up against the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's the fourth quarter, and Saquon's got 150 yards, and Jalen Hurts is 6 for 6 on tush pushes. When you've got a 6'1", 280-pound defensive tackle, which is what Sheldon Day is, the size, it just doesn't line up to the Eagles, who have Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson and these mammoths in the middle. So definitely something that is going to need to be addressed by the Commanders there. I also didn't love what I saw from Kane Medrano and Dominique Hampton. Now, I found it interesting that they started the game and they also essentially played all the way to the end. I think that was definitely intentional. I think the coaching staff knows that it's young guys. Hampton is converting from safety to linebacker. Medrano played linebacker throughout college, but he's still a converted wide receiver moving to linebacker who has major issues with tackling, which is a theme that I'm going to hit on in just a second. I love what I saw from either one of them, and I'm not willing to judge them too terribly harshly. I think there's a little more leeway for Medrano than there is for Hampton. I'm not saying their seasons are over or like their Commanders' tenures are over or anything like that. That's hyperbolic, but there were just obvious errors that they were making and things that they weren't prepared for. Dominique Hampton did not do a good job of meeting guys in the hole. Him and Medrano both had trouble getting to their run fits. Medrano had an instance where there was I think there was a reception. I don't think it was a running play. I think it was a pass play. He's next to the player with the ball. He runs up kind of on the side of him and he punches down at the ball, but he does that without wrapping up and tackling. So once he punches and he doesn't force the fumble, the player just continues to run for about 5 yards or so, and then Medrano can finally re-engage with him and drag him to the ground. But that should be one motion where if you punch, you hit the ball, it comes out, or you punch, you miss, and you get him to the ground right there. He didn't do that. There's also a play close to the goal line. I don't think it resulted in a touchdown, but first of all, it's not saying much when you give up 48 points as a defense, but he jumped the wrong gap. And that's something that takes time to learn, especially when you're playing linebacker and playing it at a high level. Is just because you can spot the hole doesn't mean that you need to charge into it. Let the running back do that. Don't do his job for him. Because as soon as you jump into that hole, if there's any sort of wiggle room anywhere, he's just going to go right around you. And you've played into his hands almost because you have directed him to open space. So that was definitely something that I noticed. Again, I've got high hopes for these guys. And the fact that Medrano, Hampton, and Tyler Owens started this game could indicate that they are the top backups. Like they're the top rotational guys. When Bobby Wagner needs a blow, when Frankie Louvu needs a blow, whoever it is, when they come to the sideline, these could be the guys running out onto the field. And I still fully believe in their potential. Jordan McGee too, even though he can't seem to get on the field. But tonight, not the best showing. That transitions well into what I thought was a huge theme, was that tackling is just going to be an issue for this team. Because Bobby Wagner can tackle, Frankie Louvu can tackle, but even still, the Commanders had tackling problems last year, And when I saw some of these efforts from Medrano, from Hampton, really a lot of players, Robert McDaniel, the undrafted free agent from Jackson State, just got plowed at the goal line. His pad level was way too high. He had no hope of making that tackle. Carlin Vigors, who I was excited to see because Zach Selby, who is a writer for the Washington Commanders, like their official team writer, he picked 4 standouts from camp last week. Carlin Vigors was one of them. It was Bill, it was Jalen Lane, someone else, I think maybe Trey Amos, someone else getting a lot of buzz. And Carlin Vigors was on that list, and he was awful. And I don't mean this to be any offense to the guy, but he wasn't tackling. He was just hitting players and hoping that they fell down. Brian Mitchell even called it out on the broadcast at one point. He wrapped up a guy and then just pushed him, but didn't go to the ground with him. And it was silly. It ended up working, but it's like, dude, just wrap up. And if a player was in front of him, if he was covering the flat and the player caught in front of him and he was crashing down on him, he would just run into them and hit him with his shoulder. He wouldn't actually wrap up at all. On top of that, his strength is supposed to be playing in man coverage because he's 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds, little athletic. I mentioned before he had a really good game when he played Texas and Arch Manning last year in college. He got burned a couple of times, couldn't stay in front of his guys, couldn't tackle at all. It was glaring. And if he doesn't come out and show a huge improvement in game 2, he won't be making the 53-man roster. I already think his chances are very slim because Noah Igbenogany was another guy who was really good tonight, one of the few. But this is a practice squad guy through and through. Maybe in a year or two you can come back to him and he's learned some of these fundamentals. But from what I saw tonight, there's just no way that he's in real competition for the 53-man roster. The last thing that I want to point out before I get into my 5 standout players, Terry McLaurin won today. And it's okay to admit that. I know that McLaurin has created some bad feelings among the Commanders fans, and I totally understand it. All of your frustrations, if you're one of those people who's upset with how Terry's handled these negotiations, your frustrations are understandable. I get it. And I would love it if this was behind us, there was no drama, the relationship was how it should be, and he was out there getting reps with his team and his quarterback. That's not the situation we find ourselves in. And a lot of people have been saying that it'll be better because Jayden won't have to target him as much and he'll be able to spread the ball out, and having a great quarterback makes other receivers better. That's absolutely true. The latter part of it. The first part about him not forcing the ball to Terry, he didn't force the ball to Terry last year. I want to make that clear. Terry was the number 1 target. He was not having balls forced his way. He had, I think, 1 catch for 5 yards against the Falcons, which is the game that clinched the playoffs. There's another game where he had 3 catches for 17 yards or something like that. I know I got the 1 for 5 right. There was another game where his output was very low. My point being, Terry McLaurin is one of the only receivers on this team who can consistently get open and consistently make contested catches. There were 2 other guys today, and I'm going to save them because I will mention them in my standout players. But watching players try to get open tonight, I was bagging on Sam Hartman, and even though Josh Johnson looked a lot better than Hartman, he still didn't look great, but that's because the receivers in part weren't getting open. They weren't beating man coverage. And in the NFL, if you can't beat man coverage, then you shouldn't have a job. That's the way that it works. That's not my personal opinion. That's what a coach will tell you. I think Sean Payton invented the term bus ticket route or bus ticket something or another. There was a drill, and basically in practice, you had to go beat man coverage, and if you couldn't, then you had to go get a bus ticket because you weren't going to be on the team. That's what was very clear with a lot of players like Michael Strachan, and Chris Moore had a couple of drops tonight. And it's just those moments where you think back to what this offense is going to look like without a legitimate number 1 receiver. Do I believe Jayden Daniels will make lesser players better? 1,000%. But that doesn't mean that you can't, that you can compete for a Super Bowl without a number 1 receiver. Can you be better than you would with an average quarterback? Sure. But to get to that top level, you need a top level playmaker. And we can argue about where Terry McLaurin's place among the NFL receiver hierarchy is, but he's significantly better than everything they have on the team right now. And this was a big win for him. This game seen how players struggled to get open. But let's talk about my 5 standout players. So quick concept definition here. We are going to have 4 different indicators. We are going to have red boxes, which is for players that it's very bad game, I am troubled. We're going to have yellow boxes, which is for there were some mess ups or some warning flags went up, but I'm not ready to judge you too harshly, or I'm not saying that I'm over you or anything like that, but I'm just, we got to keep you a little bit. Let's pump the brakes a little. We're going to have greens, which is for good, impressive. And then dark green with the game ball is going to be to the one player who stood out. You'll probably never ever get more than 1 game ball, except for very special circumstances. Jayden Daniels has 5 passing touchdowns and 5 of them go to 1 receiver. Or on the other side, Von Miller gets 3 strip sacks. Maybe you'll get 2 game balls in a situation like that. But let's start with number 5. It's going to be a red for Sam Hartman. Sam, the way you played tonight, you would be cut from the team if you weren't Jayden Daniels' best friend. And this is disappointing because I have been in these videos talking about potentially the way things are shaping up next year with Mariota's large contract for a backup, one that probably isn't needed after your quarterback's second year, your young quarterback's second year. They're going to get rid of Mariota, I would assume. You could have been in contention for QB2 with whoever's on the roster next year, whether it's Josh Johnson or someone else. But from what was on display tonight, that's just, it's not tenable. The arm strength was the biggest concern. He couldn't get the ball into tight windows. He couldn't get the ball, he couldn't throw it with leverage. He couldn't throw guys into yards after the catch. None of it worked. So I like Sam. I love Sam's personality. And I think he will still manage to find a practice squad spot just because he's so close to Jayden Daniels. But red as in, it's been 1 game and I'm already over it. A green is going to go to Jeremy Reaves, and I haven't said his name tonight, but that's by design because I wanted to save a little bit of suspense here. I thought he was excellent at tackling in the open field. There's been some notes from Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. talking about his impressiveness on defense during camp, and I wanted to interpret that as coach speak because, yeah, of course, you're going to big up Jeremy Reaves, who is an all-pro special teamer, one of your captains. We know the system they have isn't necessarily a meritocracy, at least not at the beginning. It's very experience-based. They want to make players earn their job. So I expected them to talk up Jeremy Reaves, but to see it in action, he was actually very good. I still have concerns about his ability to hold up in coverage, but when he was tasked with crashing down and playing against the run or just going to the flats and making tackles, he did an outstanding job. He was like a honing missile on those passes to the flats. And it was funny because they were very special teams return type sort of tackles where he's flying down at full speed. The receiver has just made the catch and they're looking to turn it upfield and he is right there. And that's a very special niche to have. I don't know if he's has developed his coverage skills and we can see more from him in that aspect. But from what I saw tonight, there is a role for him on the defense in special situations. So a green for Jeremy Reaves. I also want to give a green to Josh Conerly Jr. There was one slight hiccup tonight. There was a play where he had KJ Osborne lined up in a tight split on his right, and KJ Osborne threw a chip and before he leaked out onto his route, and Conerly was about half step slow getting out because Osborne had pushed the edge rusher out to the side. Conerly was a half step behind, might have gotten away with a bit of a hold, did give up a pressure, but overall he held his own in the pass protection, didn't make many mistakes, didn't give up a lot of ground. I saw him open up a couple of holes in the running game. And for a player who's been having ups and downs, as it's been sounding, he had reportedly a nice day of joint practice on Wednesday. And I thought he had a nice game overall here on Friday. So I wanted to give him a green box as well. I'm going to give a yellow to this player who I said I wasn't going to judge too harshly, but I do think it's appropriate. Dominique Hampton. This is his second year in the NFL, and he basically didn't play last year. So there's definitely an element of rust. And like I said, the coaching staff played him the entire game. So I think they recognize that. But I wanted to put him here because despite him taking last year to bulk up, I thought that he played a little small in the middle of the field tonight. I didn't see the coverage skills. I didn't see the speed. I didn't see the tenacity. There's just a lot of mental mistakes, and it did definitely look like a player who just didn't have game sharpness. But does that mean that in preseason game 2, he's going to come out and wow me because he knocked the rust off and now he's back and he's ready to ball out? I don't know. I'm not ready to give up on him. I'm not even close to that. That's why this is just a yellow. But it is somebody that I'm going to keep my eyes on because I expected more in year 2 and I didn't get it tonight. And I do have high hopes for him. So a yellow for Dominique Hampton. And I'm going to close out the video here with my final player, number 1. Jacory Brooks is going to get a green. And if I had to give a game ball tonight, it would go to him. Him or Johnny Newton had the best play tonight, but I thought Jacory Brooks was the best player. I basically didn't see him on the field in the first half. If I just missed him, please point it out in the comment section. I was looking for him. The camera angle didn't always make it easy to see whose jersey number was where, but he popped up in the second half. He had a couple of very nice catches on the first drive of the second half, hooking up with Josh Johnson. He had a nice low diving catch. And the thing that really impressed me about him was there was competitiveness. There was desire to gain yards after the catch. Most receivers tonight, they would catch the ball and it was just kind of a formality. Like, yeah, I'm going to run until I get contact and I'm going down, or I'm going to run and I'm going to go out of bounds, or I'm catching and I'm going straight down. With Brooks, he was always looking to turn upfield and fight for those yards. He also had a very nice run and catch on a screenplay, which made me think of Dyami Brown last year. Because Dyami Brown early on really didn't have a role in the offense aside from being a screen specialist. And if I'm to assume that Terry McLaurin does come back and Debo's there and Jalen Lane is there and Luke McCaffrey got knocked out of this game early, but whatever role he has, like there's probably not going to be a ton of snaps for Jacory Brooks to go around, but maybe he can get on the field as a screen specialist. Again, I was impressed with his ability to run after the catch. Also thought he just had some good fundamentals. And that's what you expect from a player who was recruited highly and spent 3 years at Alabama, has a 1,000-yard season in his only year at Louisville. It felt like him and Michael Gallup, whose name I also haven't mentioned, felt like those two were the only ones who were able to get open. But Gallup also wasn't sharp. He fell down a couple of times. One of those did cause an interception. So I would say that Jacory Brooks was, again, my most impressive player overall. I thought that he played himself into a roster spot tonight. We'll see if that holds because there are 2 more preseason games to go and more joint practices as well. But yeah, I was impressed by him. And guys, this is my official first game recap on the channel. Let me know what your thoughts were on my takeaways. Let me know especially what your thoughts are on the player rankings right here. Do you agree with the yellow, red, greens? Is there anybody you would add for any of those colors? Would you give out a game ball? Anything you have, let me know in the comment section below. Make sure that you have hit that subscribe button. I'm posting daily content. I'm working late tonight, making sure I get this out the night of the game. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this. That is the #1 way to help me out on this channel. Pressing the like button shoots this video out into the YouTube algorithms so that all the other Commanders fans get to see it as well. But that is going to do it for this episode. I appreciate you all joining me. And as I always say, I will catch you in the next one. Have a great day.